G'day and welcome to another edition of the Aussie Ideas Man. This one I'm not too interested in practicing so much, per se. Fancy words. I hope I don't put off about 30,000 of the 55,000 fanboys. But then, what the heck, none of them will watch me anyway. I hope I don't do a lot of umming and ahhing, and I hope I don't lick my lips a lot. It's a habit I have when I talk to a computer screen, my laptop. I've set up my laptop straight on my lap, so I'll jiggle about. Other times I've tried to put something over me so that my breathing doesn't affect it. But for this one, my intent is not so much for practice, but just to teach people some simple logic, to teach people how to think. And the cretin, of course, is a wonderful example of how not to think. And so I use him as an example. I don't think he's teachable, so I'm not out to teach him, but I'm out to teach anybody interested who watches my video on how to evaluate the world. And APTERA motors is one evaluation that you shouldn't make mistakes on, because it could be costly for somebody who reads it wrong. Anyway, that's enough of the guff. As an introduction, I'll be just watching his video and stopping when I think I need to have something to say. For a lot of you, if you don't like watching paint dry, you may as well just give up now. If you don't like thinking, you may as well give up now. Naturally, this one's visual, so less text boxes to do and stuff like that. But the invitation is there for you to make intelligent comments. No more accusing me of being a troll. I'm happy to be a troll. It doesn't work. No more personal attacks. I'm happy in my own skin. Personal attacks just are water off a duck's back to me. Don't waste your time with anything that's irrelevant. Stick to the facts. And you can either talk about this subject matter APTERA, which is old and stale now and doesn't really matter to me. It's on a trajectory that whatever we talk about, it won't change the trajectory. So think less about the silly trike. It's just a prop, an example. It's just something to talk about. Think about the logic. This is what this is all about. Getting people to improve their thinking ability. Now, I'm probably rocking as I do that, because the chair is a bit of a rocking chair too. You can see when I laugh, I rock. Anyway, let's get into it. Let's watch him.
All right, good morning, everyone. I got a couple of comments that the jogging videos were nausea-inducing, but most of the people didn't seem to mind too much, and I have another long run today, so I thought we would do one of these again. So this time I wanted to talk about a comment that I see really often on our videos, and that is this idea that APTERA is a scam, and that APTERA has been doing this since 2010. They never intend to deliver a vehicle. They're just taking money from investors and depositors and using this to enrich themselves. And it is a fraudulent scheme and a scam, and people should stay far away from it. Okay, so I want to address that a little by little. First of all, for depositors, there is absolutely no risk to depositors, because deposits are held in an escrow account. APTERA and its founders and leadership and employees have no access to that money. They cannot use it to pay themselves, pay for tooling, pay for development. It just sits in an escrow account. And if for some reason you want it back, they have to give it back to you by law, and another company controls that money. Now, when it comes to investors...
Okay, first things first. He says that it's safe to put a deposit on an APTERA. That's not true. It's been set up to be as safe as possible. But if there's money in an account, even if it lawfully belongs to other people, people can run away with it. That company who's set up to control it, we don't know anything about it. And that company may be dishonest and keep the money. Also, that company may even be set up by Chris Anthony and Steve Fambro, or somebody else at the top at APTERA Motors. That company just might be ready to skip and run. The other thing is, from what I've read, there are a few people that have asked for their money back. They've had letters, emails to say the money has been processed, the return has been processed, and yet they have not received the money back. This is a bit suspicious. People who have asked for their money back have not received money back. If this is all safe and sound, then why aren't the refunds being processed? And lastly, on this particular point, no, I won't say lastly, I've thought of something else. I believe that the second attempt to make an APTERA is because crowdfunding laws have changed, and quite often I find that information is being given dependent on the pre-2011 rules and regulations, and other things like information about the silly trike. They're all old information, very, very old information, and it may be wrong on that basis alone. So it might be that with changes to laws since 2011, that the cretin might not even be up to date, and this money may be able to be legally taken away at the point of, there goes my memory again, getting old sucks, at the point of bankruptcy, at the point of collapse. Nevertheless, I'll just keep going.
Yes, your money is at risk, and like I said several times on this channel, and again, reiterating that this channel does not give investment advice, and you should definitely not take investment advice from me because my track record on investments is absolutely horrible. But I've said several times that you probably should not invest money in APTERA that you cannot afford to lose, because APTERA is a startup company, and all startup companies are very risky. And so you shouldn't invest in APTERA or any other startup for that matter if there's money that you cannot afford to lose. It is a high risk, high reward type of proposition.
Now here's where I agree with him. I find when people talk about subjects that they quickly get a bit irrelevant, and in this case, just 2 items in, I believe he's a bit irrelevant. That first point where he says deposits are safe, that has nothing to do with whether Fambro and Anthony are deliberately scamming us. It just means that the deposits are safe, but the scam can go on through the second point that he's making, that the investors are feeding them, and that money can go into brown paper bags everywhere from investment money. We already know from that Warren character who looks at it financially that anybody that invests will not get a brass razoo back because they have set it up so that they take it all. Apparently, somehow they're worth tens of millions each, almost more than the money that's even been invested. It's really strange. So with his second point that investors can lose it all and it's a high risk, that's certainly not disproving the idea that it's a scam. It's actually showing that it's more than likely that it's a scam. So don't jog along saying, I think this isn't a scam because the risk is really high and you're likely to lose your money, and don't give away any money that you aren't happy to flush down the toilet. That's just been on the wrong side of the coin, if you ask me.
The landscape is littered with startup companies that did not make it. Okay, but that doesn't mean that APTERA is a scam, because if you look at the definition of a scam is a business scheme that is deceptive and fraudulent. And this means that whoever's running the scam knows that they are deceiving people. So let's say, for example, I try to start a business that I'm just not good at, but I think I can succeed. Is that a scam? No, that's not a scam, because I actually intend to run the business well, and I think that I can succeed. Now, I may be wrong in that thought process, but I'm not deceiving anyone. I'm not deceiving my investors or anything like that. Let's say that I start a business and the people who invest money with me, I don't put any of that money into the business. I just squirrel it away for myself. And I have no intention of actually running this business.
This is where he misleads. Saying that a scammer with no intention of providing a product won't invest somewhat in the product as if he's making it is just dead wrong and is very silly. He's saying, well, you can differentiate a person with honest intent from a scammer because the person with honest intent puts some money into the product development and the scammer puts nothing in. Not so. Steve and Chris are expert at putting money in to make it look like they're genuine. It's all part of the snake oil. I've heard that they've raised more than 100 million. We don't know how much they've raised. Even the honesty there is questionable. We can question everything when we don't have facts before us. But anyway, let's call it $100 million. If they've put in $100 million, all they've done is paid a few people, probably around 80, I think at most, for a couple of years, rented a couple of buildings and built 5 poorly made prototypes. So, one other, what they call a big thing, is the dies for CPC, which they say have been a lot of money. Okay. So when you add up the money that they have outlaid as opposed to the $100 million that they've got, they are what you might say, net positive. There is money above their spending that can be squirreled away, as he says. I say it too. Squirreled away into brown paper bags. They are net positive. They have been spending more since the government grant, and the Californian taxpayer is now paying for their spending. So that's a bit of a windfall for them. They didn't get those 12 AGVs until the government grant came along, and they haven't unpacked those AGVs because when they auction off the Carlsbad equipment that they own, they can get their investment back, and only the government loses on the auction value. They have been spending more on CPC dies since the government grant, and I believe the government is just propping up their spend, which is a windfall for them because it really does look a bit more like they're serious. But I believe when you crunch the numbers, there is plenty to scam. Another reason why I believe that it is a scam is when they spend on a deal for supplies, they spend mostly overseas where the money can't be traced if they fold. And for every deal that they've done, things like Yazaki and cherry parts that we don't know about and many other things, there has nothing been turned up in the way of supplies. If I were a company and I did a deal, spent some money originally to set up the deal, I would be making sure that supplies came rather quickly into my possession. They just don't seem to be doing things seriously.
I have no intention of actually delivering a product. That definitely is a scam. All right, so let's look at what APTERA is doing and see if it feels like they're doing a scam. Now, APTERA has raised about $100 million from crowdfunding, which is the most successful crowdfunding campaign in history. So that tells you that the idea they have is very inspiring and has captured the thoughts of lots of people. And most of these are small investors.
I'll just make a comment here that if you're going to set up a snake oil scam, the thing you need most is an inspiring idea. And the idea of APTERA is certainly inspiring. But that, once again, is why it's more likely to be a scam. Just making sure that the idea is inspiring. And people sold the sizzle, not the sausage, as the old advertising slogan has gone. For anybody who hasn't heard it, you'd have to live under a rock to have not heard it, but advertising long ago decided that they wouldn't sell the sausage, they'd sell the sizzle. And if you look at everything that APTERA has advertised, it's all sizzle and no sausage. Yes, the idea is inspiring, and gullible people, it's enough for them. That's all they need, an inspiring idea. They forget about facts. My whole basis for doing this is to say there's a shortage of facts, and even in this video that's saying, oh, I'm proving this isn't a scam, he has no facts. He's still on this ideas. He's a very idealistic person, but he can't think straight. You don't need to think straight to be idealistic.
People aren't investing millions of dollars. They're investing thousands of dollars probably. Maybe some people tens of thousands. And a few people indeed are investing millions of dollars. But if they were a scam, you would expect them to run a skeleton crew, very little development, build pretty prototypes that look good, but are really not that functional to attract more investors. Now,
on the point about the prototypes, it's exactly what APTERA has done. Those 5 prototypes have all proven to be fakes. So this is, once again, more reason to think they're a scam than genuine. They were advertising alphas as having solar and minimum of 250 mile of range, neither of which they had. They were advertising them to do 3.5 second quarter miles, and yet they never, while even at the drag strip, showed it could do 3.5 seconds. They were advertising lots and lots of things, and the prototypes didn't live up to reality. They were fakes. And that means they're more likely to be scamming us than genuine about building prototypes.
they have made pretty prototypes, but they've also made a very ugly prototype, the beta. You guys remember, that thing did not look good, and that was purely an engineering prototype.
Yes, the beta, I remember it. They had a video put out that said they would be making between 6 and 12 and that they would only be used for testing purposes. What they did was build one and registered it, the complete opposite of what it should have been. And the big elephant in the room with the beta was they stuck a radiator on it. That radiator was dismissed, I don't know how they could do it, by all the fanboys are saying, well, nothing wrong with that. There was something wrong with that. The whole thing about APTERA being a scam is that the skin cooling idea doesn't work. It's shown it failed before they folded in 2011, and they weren't held accountable for that. They switched the focus to lack of money when it never worked. It never proved itself to work. And now in the second iteration of APTERA, the skin cooling has shown itself to fail twice, and before that has never proven to work. It's never been proven. This skin cooling is the thing that will make the product unfit for purpose. It will never work. Now, this is the centerpiece of the scam. Skin cooling doesn't work, and yet they're selling the sizzle. The sausage is the skin cooling. The sizzle is the very few short trips that they show on video. But if they were to take it for anything more than 5 miles, it would not work. I don't care if it had the hoses attached and the startup sequence properly done. Take it over more than 5 miles on a reasonably warm day, and you're going to thermal throttle and stop on the side of the road and wait for it to cool down. That's what we've got in the APTERA as far as I can tell. Now, once again, I'm in the position where I have to prove a negative, and Fambro and Chris Anthony are taking advantage of that situation with their snake oil.
To test suspension and driving dynamics and things like that. Why would you invest in building something like that if all you want to do is attract investors? You want something.
Why would you say you're building 6 to 12 to do all this testing, then build one which was more used for joyrides than it was used for testing. They said Roush tested suspension, and I think they said some braking was tested, which we got no data from, no proof that suspension and braking was properly tested. Yet nothing else was ever tested. There are so many things to test that they would probably need 6 to 12 mules to test if they were genuine. The very fact that they used one for joyrides and put a radiator on it is so indicative of it being a scam item.
Aesthetically pleasing for that. 2, they spent a lot of money outsourcing engineering to other companies. They've been with Yazaki, which is one of the leading wiring harness manufacturers. Their harnesses are probably in more than half the vehicles out there. And so
their harnesses aren't in supply at Carlsbad, and they're supposed to have built a PI at Carlsbad already. Start to look at what the facts are. They have sent money to Japan, to Yazaki. We don't know how much they sent, and we don't know how much Yazaki has put in brown paper bags for them to collect. This idea that they've spent money overseas and got nothing for it is more indicative of it being a scam than it being genuine. But keep in mind, we are still talking about ideas. People have rights to have their ideas, and it's not an accusation, it's an idea.
They've given a lot of money to Yazaki. They've gotten into contract with Cherry Automotive and given them money. They've given money to Roush Automotive. They've given money to Monroe & Associates to help them with manufacturing. They've given money to Hinduja Tech, which is an engineering firm out of India. So they've spent a lot of money giving money to other people to do engineering to deliver a product. That doesn't seem like a really good way to keep money for yourself if you're running a scam. And then they spent tons of money on tooling, like with CPC. Those large dies are not cheap. And CPC, again, I think has probably given them a lot of the money that they need for that. And so CPC, I'm sure, wanted to look at their books and know that they're legitimate before a big company like that invested money into them. They've also spent a lot of money on Red Viking AGVs, and they've applied for government grants. And if you are running a fraudulent scheme and you are found out and you've applied for government grants, that is a state level or federal level offense. And you know, people generally don't want to go to federal penitentiaries.
Now, here's an interesting thing. He says that a scammer wouldn't apply for government grants. I don't know where he gets that from. Scammers aren't bound by some rule to say applying for government grants is not on the table. Scammers are not averse to breaking the law. The very fact that you scam is already against the law. They don't have this idea that, well, I'm scared of this law, but I'll break these other laws. I don't know where he's coming from.
So if you're running a fraudulent scheme, you probably would not want to apply for government grants and loans and tell them all your financials and give them all your information and have it vetted.
Their financials are another reason to think that they may be scammers. They're so Mickey Mouse. They're basically cut and pasting old information all the time, and the information they give is very, very amateurish, is the only way to put it. And this cretin, he's been one to point that out. He's actually pointed out silly errors, silly spelling errors that have continued numerous times through various reports, because all they've done is copied and pasted from prior reports. These things are indicative of being a scam, but I think this guy just has blinkers on, or as other people have suggested, he's in so deep and making so much money already himself that he's just going along for the ride and has put aside facts.
And that would be something that you probably want to avoid. And lastly, you want to look at the people that are running the thing. Do they have, like, what do they have to lose? So, Steve, Fanbro.
I look at Fanbro and Anthony and I see snake oil salesmen. And I've made many a video and many a comment in the past to, I would say, justify why I see snake oil salesmen. I have never heard so many lies come out of the mouths of people as I have from those two, in particular Anthony, Chris Anthony. He smells of a snake oil salesman. Other people are seeing it. They're starting to notice how when he answers questions he looks up to the left all the time, often. Now, there have been people that have decided that that's fine and that's not indicative of lying, but too much of this is happening, too long, and you can't say that something's not a scam because the perpetrators look nice. It's their job to look nice, and the better they are at it, the more people get sucked in, but it's no proof that it's not a scam. Up to date, this far, he's halfway through his spiel. He has not given one shred of evidence that they're not a scam.
And Chris Anthony, they, from what I can tell, are really intelligent, hardworking people. And they've been paying themselves around two something a year as co-CEOs of this company. Now, that is a lot of money. I suspect that includes benefits. And if you include benefits, that amount is going to be, their take-home pay before taxes is going to be less than $200,000, probably high 100s. And after taxes in California and the living costs in California, that is just not going to be a lot of money.
Didn't take long for the cretin to start guessing again. That's one thing I've noticed he's really good at. I'm just going to guess this and guess that, and my guesses are proof that it's not a scam. Well, Fanbro and Anthony could be making millions out of this. Don't worry about how much they're paying themselves. That's just irrelevant.
And I think they would get a better job than running this company with a lot more pay, with the amount of work and talent that they have. So their pay is definitely not commensurate with either their talent, ability, or the amount of work that they do. And then looking at other people that are on board.
Well, if you look at it that way, if he's so confident in guessing that these two guys can make more money elsewhere, why aren't they doing it? It's that simple. If they're intelligent and they know that they're paying themselves a pittance, why aren't they just doing something else?
Like Jason Hill, you know, this is a designer that has worked for Porsche, Hyundai, Samsung, Mercedes-Benz, several other car companies, owns his own design firm. Why would he link his name to a fraudulent company and kind of forever ruin his career over something like that? And the amount of money they have left over is like $20 million in cash. They are spending that doing tooling and paying their employees. They are not going to have much money left over to run away with. So it just...
If they have raised $100 million and they've got $20 million left over, there's $80 million that has had opportunity to squirrel away some. They could spend $30 million and have $50 million still in brown paper bags. Or they could spend $50 million and have $30 million in brown paper bags. That's still a lot of money to set yourself up for the rest of your life. You don't need another job. You can ruin your career if that's coming through.
It doesn't pass the sniff test, if you think about that. Another...
This guy can't sniff.
common suggestion that I see is that why doesn't APTERA do non-refundable deposits, increase the deposits to like $1,000 and use that money to get into production. And you know, they have close to 50,000 reservation holders. If everyone bumped it up to $1,000, that would be $50 million. That initially on the surface sounds like a good idea, but remember, these funds are held in an escrow account and they cannot be touched for development. Now, you could change the parameters of that and make it so that it is non-refundable. It's not held in an escrow account, and
this is essentially what the accelerator program is. They've gone away from a deposit for as little as $70 to a deposit for over $10,000 by fooling people into the accelerator program itself. And it's not working for them. And the reason being is that gullible people will part with $70 or $100 easily. That's why you can order up to a $48,000 item for $70, which is indicative of it being a scam. If it was genuine, the original deposit would have been at least $500. I would not think that there is any vehicle that wouldn't have a pre-order deposit under $500. I usually don't like to compare, but if you do look for deposits, pre-order deposits on other EVs, look around and average them out, and you'll find that they are nowhere near as low as $70. This is indicative of it being a scam. But the accelerator program decided we can get $10,000 per person, which we don't have to refund without breaking the law. They can legally not refund it. In either case, let's go on.
Can't touch it. And that is what a company called Elio Motors did. And I think you guys remember Elio Motors. Elio Motors, I'm sure most of you have heard of, because I think there's a lot of overlap between people that are interested in APTERA and people that were interested in Elio Motors. They are both efficient three-wheeled vehicles that in some way work best as commuters. Now, Elio was promising an 84 mile per gallon vehicle for under $10,000. Theirs, I believe, was a single-seater. I'm not really sure. But they took a bunch of non-refundable deposits that they were using for to get into production and to build up tooling. However, none of that has happened, and the company has recently come out, maybe a year ago, saying that they've converted to an electric vehicle and that they're still taking deposits. But in my opinion, Elio is a scam. I've never seen anything from that company that suggests that they are really serious about getting into production. Paul Elio has been paying himself quite a bit of money for all these years. He doesn't really have an engineering staff, and he has never like paid external companies to do subcontract engineering, and has basically kept the money to pay himself for, I mean, close to a decade at this point, I think. And you can't run a deposit where it's non-refundable and not deliver a product, because there is always the chance that something happens and you don't deliver a product. Again, startups are a high-risk proposition. And
so he spent a long time comparing with Elio, and it was all nonsense, because it's a fact that not only Elio, but dozens and dozens of other companies are scammers. No doubt about it. But what Elio does, or what all these dozens of other scammers do, is no reason to say, well, this is why APTERA is not scamming. Once again, it's more indicative that APTERA has joined the throng, that they're actually doing this similar thing. But speaking a long time about it just dulls the minds of the gullible, and he looks as though he knows what he's talking about. In that instance, he does know what he's talking about. There are dozens and dozens of scammers out there. But that, or talking a long time about that, has no evidence that APTERA is not a scam. It's a diversionary tactic.
So people are under the impression that once they get the money, it is 100% guaranteed to get into production. There's no such thing. There is no guarantee of getting into production, even with sufficient funds. There's always unexpected things that can come up. So taking non-refundable deposits is a legally risky proposition, and it's something that I've talked to Chris Anthony about, and he says for various reasons they have decided not to do that, and mainly because they're not running a scam. They want to deliver a vehicle. They don't want to disappoint anyone. They understand investors are taking risks, and investors should understand that they are taking risks, but deposit holders need to be protected from risks, and so they are not.
How has Chris Anthony convinced him that they're protecting deposit holders from risks? Doesn't add up. What has Chris Anthony done to protect deposit holders from risk? Nothing. So why has he mentioned it? It's just waffle talking. It's just, I don't know, it's guff. It's nothing. And he talks to Chris Anthony, but he worships the ground he walks on. This is how you can easily believe that it's not a scam. You're starry-eyed. And when you're starry-eyed, the brain shuts down.
Going to do that. At least at the last time I talked to them.
And as I'm editing this, I realized that I forgot probably one of the most compelling reasons that I believe APTERA is not a scam is Sandy Monroe's involvement in it. This is a guy that is fairly well known and has been very vocal in his support of APTERA, and he himself is an investor. And it seems very unlikely that he would stake his reputation on something that he knows is a scam. And being so involved with them and consulting for them, I feel like he would know if they were behaving in a way that seemed like they were not intending on getting into production and delivering a car. Okay, so let me know in the comments below why you think, any other reasons that you might think that APTERA is or is not a scam.
Well, Sandy Monroe is at an age now where I don't think he can remember what he had for breakfast. He is at that stage where he has no need to protect the reputation. And if he's had whisperings in his ear that he can retire to Barbados with a cool $6 million untaxed, he just might succumb to it. We don't know. I'm not saying he is, but I am saying that we can't bank on the likelihood that he's maintaining an honesty approach. He could even be as honest as the day is long and just be fooled. You know, he might not be in on the scam, but he might be a victim of it. We don't know. Could be either way. But certainly we can't hold up Sandy Munro as proof that there's no scam going on. For a start, they constantly say he's invested in it, but who knows? Has he really invested in it? Where is his investment? I'd be interested to see if there's an FM on the accelerator program. No, this is nothing. This doesn't prove that it's not a scam. This is a person who can't think straight, who worships the ground Chris Anthony walks on, and who just wants to keep churning out videos because he's invested in it and he's in too deep. I just hope people not only take into consideration what I have said. Unfortunately, it's all off the top of my head. I haven't been able to put it down in clear and concise ways. But not only what I've said, but everything about them from 2006 on. Take into consideration everything about them and stick to facts. Don't stick to this, I think I believe this, and it doesn't look like this, and all sorts of stuff. I'm guessing this. Don't factor those in with any weight. Stick to facts. What are the facts? Put the silly trike up on the facts, not the claims alone. Put it up on the facts, and you will then find out that it is more likely to be a scam, much more likely to be a scam than it is a genuine article. Well, that'll do for me. That's enough to put out this video. Like I said, you probably have to enjoy watching paint dry to stick through it to the end. Till I come up with something else, probably something that I can learn editing on more so next time. Bye for now. Stay safe.